and thanks for joining us for another episode of Tea and Trowels, a video series by the Florida Public Archaeology Network, featuring conversations with archaeologists about their research and what archaeology means to them. I'm Emily Jane Murray, one of your hosts, and I'm looking forward to my conversation today because I am joined by Dr. Jon Endonino, who is a professor of anthropology at Eastern Kentucky University, but he has some Florida roots. How's it going, John?
It's going great considering the way the world is right now and being mostly confined to my home. I'm doing all right.
Excellent. Would you like to introduce yourself and then tell us about your mug?
Hi, I'm Dr. Jon Endonino, and I'm here in Richmond, Kentucky in my folk Victorian house built in 1906. It just had its 114th year birthday on March 14th. So we're pretty happy. And I have here my very gaudy 1970s thrift store find mug filled with Irish breakfast tea, which I got from a local place here or down in Lexington.
Very cool. Well, I worked really hard to think about what mug to bring in honor of you and your research today. And I went with glass because you study pre-ceramic cultures. So I didn't want to show up with some ceramics and look like a fool.
Well, here's an interesting tie-in. Most of glass is silica, and most of stone tools in pre-ceramic culture are silica dioxide. So there's a silica connection between your mug and tools.
Nailed it.
Well done.
So what made you want to become an archaeologist?
So I think the roots of my career choice run deep and manifest early. When I was, I think, 3 or 4 years old, so my mother tells me, I asked for a shovel for Christmas, and I would proceed to dig holes in various places in the yard. So I think the aptitude was there from the beginning. And I have always had an interest in old stuff, like old movies. As a kid, I collected old coins. And also, as a kid, growing up in north central Florida in the Denellen area, I lived on a lake, and I would find occasionally artifacts down by the lakeshore where they'd rode out. And at the time, I didn't think much of them. But on a fateful day, coming home from classes at Central Florida Community College in 1992, I stopped by a public beach for some reason, I don't know why, walked down to the water, and I found a levee point and a preform in the freshly tilled beach. And that got my wheels turning, and so I went home. And I was ready to go get a shovel and go down to the beach and start digging for artifacts. My mother convinced me not to, and suggested that instead I register for a class in archaeology or anthropology. And I did both back over Thanksgiving break in 1992. And that kind of set the stage because the class that I had, the instructor for both was Gary Ellis, who is the director emeritus of the Gulf Archaeology Research Institute. And he gave me volunteer opportunities at Crystal River State Archaeological Site, at Fort King, working in his lab on various projects, and I was hooked. So on some advice from my mother, I ended up becoming an archaeologist with some help from some friends and some mentors.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, all credit to my mom. It was her idea.
I was going to say, and a good lesson in archaeology ethics there from the start, right?
Yeah, although I think her concern was more with people not falling in the holes and being sued over injuries. But ultimately, yes, as a positive outcome of that discouragement, I also didn't become a looter.
That's awesome. Well, this is the ultimate challenge for everybody. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your current research in only 30 seconds?
30 seconds, research, got it. So my main research area is investigating the social, ecological, and historical context for the emergence and cessation of late archaic mortuary mound construction and use during the Thornhill Lake phase of Mount Taylor in Northeast Florida. And I'm also interested in the provenance determinations, the sourcing of lithic tools in the Florida Peninsula. I think that was less than 2 seconds,
That was less
but
than
there you
30
go.
seconds. Yeah. Do you want to elaborate on maybe some of the sites you've worked at too? You stuck to the rules too well here.
Oh, sure. I can improv and expand. So where I started my mound research at the Thornhill Lake Complex, which is over on the St. Johns River, across from Sanford in the Lake Monroe Conservation Area, and it is one of the better known and sites which were suspected to be pre-ceramic, late archaic, but we didn't have any evidence for it. Clarence Moore found some banner stones and beads there, and several researchers have considered to be archaic, and it sure is, between 5,600 and about 4,700 cal BP for mound construction. And so my interest in that site morphed over the course of my dissertation, whereby about 2008, I had turned my eye eastward and northward to the Tomoka complex, which had a similar assemblage of banner stones found in the largest mound at the site. And in 2008, I began thinking about it. And in 2013, I started a program of research at Tomoka, the Tomoka Archaeology Project, which is, I just finished the report a couple months ago. And so I'm ready to start planning the next phase of that research. But so my main area, Mounds, my main site that I'm working at now is Tomoka.
Tomoka, known for its awesome mounds and large tick population.
It has an abundance of both mounds and ticks.
I was going to say that's my most memorable field experience with you, is the just giving up on trying to even count how many ticks we encountered.
And as you were just lucky enough to be there at the worst possible year for ticks. There hasn't been a worse year for ticks since.
Oh boy. Well, what's one of your favorite tools in your toolkit when you go and take a look at some of these mound sites?
Well, that's an easy one for me, and I have a lot of tools in my toolkit, and not all of them have as much significance as others. But I do have one in particular, which I think is on the shelf next to me here. Oh, there it is. Reach back here on my shelf. This is my very first trowel. And the reason this is important is because it's my very first trowel. On the advice of my mentor, Gary Ellis, way back when, he suggested that I needed to get a trowel and metric tape measures. And that was my first time searching for a metric tape measure in the early 1990s, and it wasn't as easy as you would think. But I still have it too. This is my trowel. My grandfather took me to a Ace Hardware in Dunellen, Florida, and bought it for me, and I've been using it faithfully since about 1993.
That's pretty cool. And so
although it's more or less retired now. It sits on a shelf in my office, so it's too important to risk losing in the field now.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I guess metric tape measures have gotten a little easier to find, but that's always the trick.
They have. It was much more of a challenge in, say, 1993. And I think I still have that. Oh, here it is. Aha! My very first tape measure too.
Very cool.
It's regal and pink. If you drop it in the leaf litter, it should be easier to find.
That's important to think about.
You got two favorite tools that have been retired.
It's good. Well, what's your worst field story that you can now laugh about?
That I can now laugh about? Actually, I was kind of laughing about it then, but shortly after it happened. But before I became an academic, I spent a lot of years working in cultural resource management. And on one particular project in the summer of 2001, I was working on a gas pipeline running through the area around Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And a few events occurred, mostly related to hills, water, and vehicles. The first, and I actually have a photograph of it. There are several incidents on this project which make it memorable. But I have here a photograph of me sitting on the hood of a truck that I got stuck in a creek. And in the process of trying to escape from the creek, I burned out the clutch on the truck, which, sounds terrible, like I don't know how to drive stick, but in fairness, the clutch was already going out when I was given the vehicle to use. So I claim no responsibility for it. So anyway, I got stuck in a creek, and that was fun. And on another project, or on a project on a different day, we were driving down a clay hill after a rain and started sliding sideways down the hill until the truck finally came to rest against a tree very gently. That was adventurous. Also, rains way up north flooded the Pearl River after we had already crossed it. So on our way back to the vehicles, we encountered a raging torrent because apparently water will move quickly down a river. And so in an effort to get back to our trucks at the end of the day, having been cut off by said, I guess you call it a flash flood, the Pearl River went from something you could walk across to something you dare not walk across. So essentially, I commandeered an abandoned John boat and paddled across the river with shovels. So a very adventure-filled project, all related to water and transportation.
I mean, those could be scenes out of Indiana Jones, ethically paddling with shovels across the flooding river. All you need are snakes falling in the boat, right?
I mean, yeah, snakes living underneath the seat would have been even better. But there were fire ants, so that's something.
Always a fun day. And did you get the project? Did you get the archaeology complete? That's the real question.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We finished that, but along the way there were adventures to be had. And there, on the final day of the project, we came across the section of the pipeline that ran across a swamp, and we gazed upon it with horror and decided to walk around. We weren't going to walk through that swamp because there was probably about a half a kilometer of water of unknown depth. So we decided, no, we're going to walk around this. Even though it meant adding considerable time to our workday and our travels, it's like, no, I'm not walking through there. Not today.
Yeah, not after all those other adventures with water.
I have a lot of memories of projects that I can laugh about now, like the time that we almost died from heat exposure by 10 a.m. because it was so hot and we ran out of water. Sitting underneath Brazilian peppers down in Plantation, down south of Tampa. Forgetting the name of the Sun City Center. That's it. Sitting underneath Brazilian pepper, waiting for the young, strong person to drive the vehicle up. It was horrible. It was a terrible day.
Oh man.
Many more.
Yeah, that's fun. Well, here's our big question. How is archaeology going to help you save the world?
Well, so what I have prepared, I took some time to think about this, and I'm sure other people have said it and will say it, but I think archaeologists are well positioned to provide some kind of historical context for how humans have adapted to changing environments through time. Although the scales of the societies are greatly different, we might be able to learn something in terms of human responses with regard to adaptation and resilience when faced with rapidly changing environmental circumstances. But also, I think paleoethnobotany has a lot to offer us as well in terms of how ancient crops, the ancestral strains of various kinds of crops that we depend on might be improved through perhaps crossbreeding with older, more drought or pest resistant relatives. Maybe even looking at more sustainable methods of farming. I think it's, what is it, in Mexico, in the Central Valley, the Chiapas, the artificial floating island farms made from lake and marsh bottom muck. In any case, I think maybe archaeology can help us maybe find better ways to farm and produce food for people in a world with growing populations and perhaps reduced arable land.
I like that. It's funny. I feel like everyone's like, oh, I think everyone's already said this, but each person we've talked to has had a little something different to say. So I think it shows the variety and you know, all the different ways that we can think about archaeology even. So, well, we have a bonus question. What's keeping you sane during the quarantine?
Ooh, okay. So I have learned that I work really well with a schedule. I perform best with structure. That said, some of the things that are helping me survive social isolation and social distancing are pretty simple. It's now warm enough to work in my garden. So working in my flower beds out front provides me with some outdoor time, mowing the grass, but also other things like alphabetizing my records, rearranging my record collection, other things. Naps and Netflix are definitely helping a lot. We might call that self-care. I'm definitely catching up on my sleep.
That's good. Yeah, we're all going to come out of this well-rested with immaculately clean and organized houses and gorgeous lawns and gardens.
That's the next stage of my social distance quarantine coping is I'm going to start painting. I have a lot of painting to do upstairs, and I think I'm about ready for it now.
Oh man, things getting so desperate. We're turning to painting. Well, thanks for.
Listen, those baseboards and trim won't paint themselves.
If only. Yeah. Well, thanks for taking some time to chat with us and talk about some of these cool projects and research. And thanks to our viewers from home for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Thanks for having me.